Now, earlier today, a new trailer for Season 7 of The Clone Wars dropped, and right off the bat, I have to say, wow, did it ever look fantastic. And I mean that in more ways than one, because not only does it look like we're going to be getting a great action-packed and intriguing end to the series, one that will be overlapping with the events of Revenge of the Sith as we're taken right up to and through Order 66, but visually, this looked incredible. It's hard to believe how far this show has come, again in more ways than one, since it started with the 2008 Clone Wars movie. I mean, sure, the animation back then looked okay in its own right, a bit blocky and stiff, I'd say. And yeah, I'd argue it looked pretty good for a weekly cable TV show, especially in comparison to the two animated shows that would follow it, those being Rebels and Resistance. But the fluidity of the animation in this trailer, as well as the emotion behind the facial expressions, and just the look and vibrancy of it all, was absolutely top notch. And it makes me really hope that this show is a massive success for Disney Plus, so that they realize there can be a very bright future for Star Wars animation when they put the time, effort, and money into it, that is. Because those are three things that, I'm sorry to say, I feel like Resistance is lacking. Sure, it's been a little bit better in its second and final season, and I'll do a full review video on it when it's all said and done, but Resistance at its best is still leagues away from the quality level of the Clone Wars. And as I've said before, and I'll say it yet again here, some of the story arcs in the Clone Wars, especially in the later seasons, are some of the best Star Wars you'll see anywhere. And I hope I'll soon be counting these three new story arcs that we'll be getting in Season 7, which will span 12 episodes, among those great ones. And yes, I know some will want to grumble about only getting 12 new episodes, and I'd obviously love to get a full season, especially knowing 2 more full seasons were planned and even written at one point, but 12 is better than 0. Plus, there's always a chance some of the episodes could run a bit longer than your standard 22 minutes, since this isn't going to be on a cable channel, and they don't have to worry about fitting it into a 30-minute window littered with commercials. And really here, even though I don't want to give Disney too much credit for bringing the show back when they're the ones who canceled it in the first place, I'm just happy that the Clone Wars is getting the proper ending it deserves. As for the 3 aforementioned story arcs, we do know what they're going to be about, more or less. We'll be getting a finished and enhanced or added to version of the Bad Batch story arc, which was originally released in rough animation at Star Wars Celebration in 2015. We'll also be getting an arc about what Ahsoka does immediately after she leaves the Jedi Order, and she seems to stay on Coruscant and meets a friend. Then we'll also be getting the Siege of Mandalore, which happens during the events of Revenge of the Sith, and again, goes right up to and through Order 66. Okay, so looking a little closer at the trailer now, and what really stood out to me, because I'm not going to go through this whole thing clip by clip, I'm sure plenty of other channels have already done that. First, I loved Rex's line about how the clones have mixed feelings about the war, because without it, they wouldn't exist. And though the Clone Wars does a great many things that I love and appreciate, like introducing many awesome new characters, and really fleshing out the time period of the prequels, what it did for the clones is perhaps the most impressive thing of all. I mean, in the very first episode of the series, Yoda talks to a group of clones and tells them how he sees them all as individuals in the Force. And over the course of the show, we the audience learn to see them as individuals as well. Because in the prequel films, there really is nothing to the clones. They're a massive army, and frankly, they feel a little different than the droids they're fighting against. Sure, Revenge of the Sith does make a small, token effort to imply they have personalities by giving us some brief interactions between Cody and Obi-Wan, letting us know they do take on names and have some level of rapport with the Jedi they fight alongside, but that's about it. And no, I'm not upset that the movies don't delve into this. There's really not enough time for it, even though there are some really interesting moral questions to be asked in regards to Jedi essentially using people to literally fight a war for them. And one of the things I really love about the Clone Wars is it addresses those questions and explores them. And you get to see that as the war rages on, some of the clones begin to get worn down and start to question everything about their existence. And though I like and I'm okay with the idea that there are chips in all of their heads that make them comply with Order 66, the more interesting route to take perhaps, and this is how it was done in the expanded universe before the Clone Wars series actually came about, is what decisions the clones would make if Order 66 was a choice, if it's simply one of many orders that they've learned or memorized, and one they think is never going to be given until it actually is. How do they respond to it? Anyway, not to get too far into that here and now, the line from Rex was fantastic, and I'm happy that we'll be getting even more depth out of the clones in these last few episodes. The next thing worth noting, and it was a small thing but I still enjoyed it, was seeing Depa Billaba and Caleb Doom, who will one day take on the name Kanan Jarrus, at one of the War Council meetings. It's a nice little touch to further connect Rebels and Clone Wars, and it'll be interesting to see if, during this, she maybe even gives a brief report on the situation on the planet Kalar, which is where she gives her life to save her Padawan during Order 66. Another rather cool moment from the trailer was hearing Mace Windu say how he senses a plot to destroy the Jedi, which of course is a scene lifted right from Revenge of the Sith. And I'm not sure how much overlap we should expect, or should I say, how much of this will be taking place during the events of Episode 3, and I thought that mainly we'd just see the Siege of Mandalore, which happens at the same time as Revenge of the Sith, and not much else during this time, but who knows. I mean, the scene with Anakin and the hologram of Padme where they touch hands seems like it could potentially be during Episode 3. I say that mostly because I get the impression in Revenge of the Sith that the two hadn't seen or been able to even talk to each other for some time. Also, Padme has her hand on the side of her stomach, and I think she would consciously not do that if she hadn't told Anakin yet. Then again, it's probably just supposed to be a beautiful, somewhat haunting scene considering what's to come, just a moment shared between the two for the show. Another thing I'm really excited about is getting to see yet another perspective of Order 66, and this time mainly from the perspective of Rex and Ahsoka, who will be together for it during the Siege of Mandalore. And I wonder how Rex will react to it if they truly are together, like literally around each other, when the order is given. Technically, Ahsoka is not a Jedi, but Rex may very well still see her that way, and they do make a big deal out of how much the clones all respect Ahsoka, even repainting their helmets for her. Likely, it's going to be a hell of an emotional scene that I can't wait for, and I don't want to talk too much more about it here. I've probably already said way too much for some, because we do learn a little bit more about it in the Ahsoka novel from a few years ago now, and I don't want to spoil anything more for those of you who haven't read the book, which I do recommend reading if you're a fan of Ahsoka, though I'd wait till after watching Season 7 of the Clone Wars to do it. Basically, the book tells the story of what happened to Ahsoka after the events of the Siege of Mandalore, and up to her becoming a part of the fledgling rebellion. Anyway, I'd very much say that Ahsoka, along with Maul, were the two stars of this trailer, and Ahsoka should really be the standout of this final season, with two of the arcs pretty much being about her. And really, I think that's the way it should be. Obviously, Clone Wars is an anthology-style show, or one that involves many characters and many different stories all loosely tied together, but I'd say Ahsoka was the main character, and her journey has always been the one we, the audience, were supposed to relate to the most. And speaking of Ahsoka, speculation about when and where we'll see her next is always a hot topic, and there are rumors out there that we could see her in The Mandalorian at one point, which actually might kind of make sense considering her heavy involvement in the Siege of Mandalore. We even see her shaking the hand of Bo-Katan at one point, and she's a character, assuming Bo-Katan is still alive, that I'm almost certain we'll see in The Mandalorian at one point. The only question surrounding Ahsoka being in The Mandalorian then is how well can they or will they handle a live-action version of the character. Getting back to the trailer, the other huge standout again was Maul. I can still remember how hesitant I was when I heard, years ago now, that they were bringing him back in the Clone Wars. Yes, like pretty much everyone else, I loved everything about him in The Phantom Menace, other than him getting killed, of course, but bringing characters back from the dead is such a slippery slope. It's like opening Pandora's box. Once it's opened, where does it stop? And every time someone dies, you have to always wonder, are they really dead this time? That said, in hindsight, bringing back Maul was actually a brilliant decision. After The Phantom Menace, he was one of the coolest characters in Star Wars, but now after Clone Wars as well as Rebels, he's become truly one of the best, most interesting and developed characters in the whole franchise. It's so awesome that they brought back Ray Park to do motion capture for this, and I cannot wait to see how it looks, to see Ray Park as Darth Maul in action once again. That alone would make it worth the watch. Other than those things, nothing about this trailer stood out to me at all, but it's hard to really stand out when everything about it looks great. Usually, and I know it bugs some of you out there, but I always point out something I don't like or that I think could have been better. But I got nothing for you this time. This looks incredible, and I am nothing but excited and have absolute faith in Dave Filoni and his team that this will be the ending the series and we fans deserve. The Mandalorian and now this really begins to wash the bad taste from my mouth left by the sequel trilogy and gives me plenty of hope for the future. And as I said at the start, I hope this is a huge hit, that it's a big win for Disney Plus and we get more shows like this soon enough. I think Star Wars lends itself incredibly well to animation, and the following for it will only grow and grow as more and more people realize how good it can be. In my personal life, I've convinced several people to watch The Clone Wars who were otherwise leery about watching a Star Wars cartoon, but every last one of them have come back to me and thanked me for convincing them to watch it. And if you're someone out there who's never watched the show and you don't think you'd like it, do yourself a favor and try it. Yes, the first couple seasons are a bit rough at times, but it really hits its stride in season 3. And you better start now, because you have less than a month to catch up. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me if this trailer got you even more hyped for Season 7. Also, would you like to see Disney and Lucasfilm invest more time, effort, and money into animated projects? Do you agree with me that animation and Star Wars really go hand in hand when done well? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.